thought about how, the government, they're not making things better because maybe they don't know what better is, how to make it better. But you're also talking about, certain African groups or different groups of people. They're not refugees. They're not fleeing from the war. They're economic migrants. They're being put up in hotels. They're getting given money. They're getting given maybe they're not stolen bicycles. Maybe free second-hand bags and tips and like that. But they're getting put into communities in the middle of nowhere. There's not really many jobs and stuff going, but they're just being put there. And you not think that maybe this is intentional in a way to kind of they don't want it to get better. They want to drive it down. They want to drive down services. They want to drive it down so they don't have to do it anymore. And they've just got more serfs to work shit jobs and stuff.
There's a bit of a mix. Having spoken to quite a few people in the Westminster bubble, they're genuinely clueless idiots. And that doesn't exculpate them from the moral crime that they've committed by robbing us of our culture. Absolutely not. But lots of them see the inverse demographic pyramid coming down the pipe with the fact that our birth rate... Did anyone see the ONS birth rate that came out, statistics, about 2 weeks ago? So, reminder, replacement rate is 2.1 children per woman. The UK is at 1.49 at the moment.
If you're wondering about Maloney, the Italian rate is 1.
Yeah.
So in about 30 or 40 years, Italy's Italian population is going to halve.
Yeah. And bear in mind, this is everywhere except sub-Saharan Africa at the moment is currently trending that way. And even they are knocking off one child every 10 years. India is below sub-replacement rate. They've just hit 1 billion, but they're trending in the same direction. So they don't know how to fix this problem. I think it's probably a product of industrial modernity, but they don't want to confront that.
There's one answer, and nobody wants to admit it. It's birth control.
That too.
Right. It's birth control. It's the fact that women have the option of doing this that makes it possible. And one of the things, I think you're exactly right. They think, I'm absolutely certain that they do think that, we've got to pay the pensions. It's okay, they're going to have to go. The idea of a state pension is actually not very old, right? It's like post-World War II or something like that. It's literally just after World War II. This is kind of an experiment. Can a society maintain a pension scheme? And no, because it's a pyramid scheme, right? You need an ever-growing population. And if the old segment of that pyramid continues to grow, then the thing will collapse. Again, it just can't pay for itself. So we're going to, at some point in your lifetimes, you're probably going to have to think about, okay, what do we do in the future if there are no pensions? Or what did people do in the past, actually? They had close families. They would look after their grandparents. This is something that the boomers won't have to do, but you may well have to think about that. Because, how old are you guys, roughly? 20? Yeah. So in 40 years' time, you think Ahmed is going to be paying for your pension? I don't think he wants to.
Not just he doesn't want to. A little while ago, the World Health Organization surveyed people working in the social care industry. So they asked the workers themselves, and at least 1/3 of them admitted to abusing their own patients.
They don't care about you.
They're
literally
hate
mercenaries. They have come here for money. And the thing is, we know that they will just leave when the getting is not good, because already 600,000 of them a year leave. So basically, we're waiting for the collapse, so millions of them will just go. They'll just go of their own accord, right? When this place is no longer worth coming to. So again, you might think, I'll just have a foreign guy who's paying my pension and taking care of me in a nursing home. No, you might not actually. And also, and let's say you did, foreigners are just as susceptible to the birth rate spiral as we are. There's going to come a time where countries less liberal than our own will just say, no, you're not allowed to leave. You're not allowed to leave. We need you to pay the pensions of the people here. And so this whole experiment from the 20th century, the 20th century lays like a dead hand on our civilization. It wasn't always like this. And I know that I keep saying this, but I really want you to take this in. It used to be that we actually had a vibrant civilization that was outwards looking and was doing things in the world rather than constantly subsumed under the world. And I know it sounds wild to hear, but that's really what it was like. But sorry, anyway, who next had their hand up?
Just everything you've talked about pretty much. I guess immigration being the top one. This relates more to, I guess, parties and government. How much of this is attributable, in your mind, to maliciousness, and how much of it is due to just incompetence?
So Connor already said that he thinks it's incompetence.
Well, mix. Definite mix. I think Michael Gove, there is a place in the deepest circle of hell for that human being.
Yeah.
And also, but the reason I say it's incompetence...
What's that libertarian? Steve something.
Steve Baker.
Yeah, oh God.
Yeah, I was next to him yesterday.
Sometimes I just pray for the collapse.
Part of it is,
I hate Steve
part of
Baker.
it is genuinely that they're wedded to a managerial mindset where they can only value things they see on a spreadsheet. And so if they can't create genuine growth that's competitive with other countries, what they'll do is they'll just battery farm Africans because, funnily enough, lots of people don't even realise state spending is counted as part of GDP. So if they just bring people over and then keep it so that money's changing hands and basically create a laundry of just redistributing tax to people that need it the most, then it looks like more people equals more good. Same reason why they're doing the institutional childcare thing. They want to eliminate motherhood so that more money is changing hands.
Dan Tubbs used to work in, which Conservative MP was it? I can't remember. He worked for one of the Conservative MPs. And so he was in many of these meetings. And all they would do is just divide the population by the average wage of the country and say, okay, well, then we need more population in order to create growth. But of course, that's not how it works, is it? And everyone knows that's not how it works. But yeah, they're wedded to this model because I really think this is the case. They're just afraid of being left holding the bag when it turns out the pensions can't be paid. And I think they don't want that to be their legacy. And so I don't actually think much of it is maliciousness. I think it's fear, actually, and cowardice, that we don't have statesmen anymore. Because a statesman would stand up and say, look, this cannot go on. These are the facts. This is what we're doing. And this is what will end up collapsing. So we have this option, or this option. We need to have a public debate about this. But of course, none of them are like that. Because they're basically... I wish it was malevolence. Right? Because then at least we could be like, right, we need the Fellowship to take the ring to Mordor. Simple. We've got it sorted. They're not even evil. That's the problem. They're selfish careerists. And they're just selling everything out. They don't care. They're going to be on a golden parachute out of this, right? They're going to look at Nick Clegg being the CEO of Facebook in England or Britain or whatever, right? That's where they're going, and that's where they intend to go. If they were trying to kill us, it'd at least be easier to deal with it. Yes, chap up there. Sorry, come to you.
If you had to, like, we just kind of come from Brighton, so I have a very depressing view of what the average person will accept.
Yeah.
But there's a kind of like respite in the right where it goes, oh well look, they may have the corporations, they may have the state, but you know, the sort of private associations that we create, like our local chapter or something, like the Scouts, whatever, all these nice things that we created in the past that we sort of have now, like golf association. As long as we have those, the common man will come back and will return back everything, and then you sort of realise that like common people can accept quite a lot of things, and so this kind of begs the question of do we need, even if we can get back the elite, the institutions, can we redeem the plebs? Can we redeem because as we saw in the Roman Empire, the plebs basically ruin everything. So can you actually redeem them in any way?
I think that's totally unfair, actually. Again, 100 years ago, the average man or woman in England was a pretty decent fellow. I'm currently reading a book called In Search of England by Henry Morton, who's a journalist who nearly died in Palestine, got worried that he'd never see England again, and came back and just drove around and documented what he found. And all of the people there are just, I would call them high quality people. Even the farmers he speaks to, they're not stupid, they're not indecent. They're good and virtuous people. And so they could be again. There's nothing stopping them. And actually, I think the average person, it probably is a pretty decent fellow. The problem is the 20th century lays on them like a dead hand. They don't know that it's weird to have the BBC, right? It's weird, civilizationally speaking, to have a single point where the government can propagandize the entire population. That's never happened before. Like, how would that happen in like the 15th century? It's really weird. It's really unusual. And actually, we may well, because of the decentralization of the internet, be heading into a time where that's no longer the case. And so other mechanisms have to be considered when it comes to the political interplay of people. But also, I don't think we need to worry too much about what the average man or woman really thinks, right? Because they're not personally going to get involved in politics. They just want to pay their taxes to whoever the king is, right? And that's the way it's always worked. The average person doesn't really want to be invested in Westminster politics or to be concerned about the king's brother raising an army and going to knock off the king, and he doesn't care. He wants to live his life. So if you think of yourselves as one of the political class, really just make sure you've got some of them on side. That's all you need to do, really. You don't need to expect anything from them other than moral support, really.
Who here knows what a Dino is? Good. Wonderful. For those who don't...
the Dino thesis.
Yes, if you've seen about 10 Seconds of Love Island, you will have spotted him. He drives a BMW on finance, he wears River Island gear, he lives in a Barrett new build with Mrs. Dino, right? It is a cruelty to inflict politics on the Dino. It is.
It's not wrong.
There was once a cultural safety net where civic society cared mainly about, are we serving families rather than the trickle-up GDP stuff? And they didn't conscript them into one grand progressive goal of stewarding history towards its inexorable arc. Because Dino's not capable of that. And Dino, it's not his fault, he's actually pretty happy to be left alone. Same with Baz up north in Wetherspoons, chatting about the missus. He's a nice bloke, salt of the earth guy. So I wouldn't hold such contempt for said plebs. Also, if there is something encouraging, the radicalized Telegram boomers that came out of COVID prove that there are some people that will be switched on when something is so egregious and in their face that it can no longer be denied. But one of the main points to take away from that, and you're hinting at elite theory, which I'm persuaded by somewhat, the deracination of civil society, Scouts being a great example, particularly now that that's mixed sex, same with the cadets, same with boys' clubs and the like. That was a legal thing, that wasn't a cultural thing. And so sometimes law can dictate culture. So it has to be from both directions. There has to be a group of salt of the earth, culturally safeguarded people that aren't necessarily politically engaged. And at the top, you need people who serve their interests without relying on them for the legitimacy of their cause at all times. You shouldn't need them all voting in order to have that. So yeah, we need legal reform and also for Dino to be left alone, and that'll be a lot healthier.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.